This is the brief on the ongoing debate around Gretchen Rossi and Slade Smiley's relationship status and, well, their finances. In this video, we'll be talking about that recent RHOC after-show discussion. You know, the one where the cast really questioned why Gretchen and Slade still haven't married after more than 16 years together, kind of forcing Gretchen to respond. Okay, so the whole thing started when co-stars like Emily Simpson began probing Gretchen about where things really stand with Slade, especially regarding, who's paying the bills. Gretchen felt the questions were a bit much, saying she thought the women had an ulterior motive for digging into her personal life like that. She was pretty adamant, firmly denying that any money worries were the reason they hadn't walked down the aisle yet. But then Gina kind of illustrated the alleged financial history, clarifying that Gretchen had mentioned before how Slade lost a lot back during the 2008 housing crisis. Gina suggested they should maybe just be upfront about that. This prompted Tamra Judge and others to chime in, basically saying, look, it's been 14, maybe 17 years, plenty of time for Slade to rebuild financially, right? Heather Dubrow was openly skeptical, really doubting they'd ever get married. She brought up how Gretchen apparently told her it's specifically her house and her money and her things. Then Shannon Bedore said she felt Gretchen and Slade would eventually marry, maybe for their little girl Skylar Gray, believing the holdup was purely financial. Heather countered that, though, asking why Slade would have done that big helicopter proposal if money issues were supposedly so severe. Before we get into the next update, I need to check in with you all. If you're enjoying our little tea session, take a millisecond to hit the like button and subscribe to join the best reality TV community on YouTube. Done? Let's move on to next update now.
Next, we are going to talk about the latest drama from the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, centered on a pretty shocking confrontation over lawsuits and then a really difficult family revelation. So the latest episode illustrates Lisa Barlow's explosive return, okay? She was in full defense mode after hearing she was basically the only topic of conversation during that RV trip, especially from Bronwyn Newport, who'd been researching Lisa's lawsuits. Heather Gay actually met with Lisa and kind of reported that Bronwyn was, quote, annihilating her over these lawsuits. Lisa was also pretty steamed that Angie apparently compared her to Jen Shah, and she felt Meredith Marks just didn't defend her, even though Brittany Bateman did speak up for Lisa, to be fair. Okay, so cut to Amy's party. Lisa confronts Angie and Bronwyn, and wow, it escalated fast. Lisa gets into this tit-for-tat with Bronwyn, leading to this stunning low blow where Lisa calls Bronwyn a gout dick sucker, yep, you heard that right, and attacks her marriage, suggesting her clothes were paid for by, let's just say, favors to her husband. But Bronwyn immediately fired back. She demanded to know who was paying for Lisa's clothes and, crucially, who was paying the American Express card mentioned in Lisa's court documents. Then the producers actually illuminated the point, showing alleged proof, a court note stating payments were made on an AMEX issued in Lisa's name, but managed under, someone else's personal American Express account. Bronwyn openly wondered if Lisa's husband John knew about this specific detail, wanting him kept out of it, apparently. Yikes.
Then, shifting focus quite a bit, Mary Cosby's son, Robert Jr., shared something really sensitive with his mom. He admitted that while he's not really in that dark place anymore, he feels super isolated. He said he's turning to drugs again, specifically smoking weed, to find the, quote, stimulus he craves. He acknowledged it's scarier than he thought because he feels like he has to fundamentally change who he is as a person. Just really heavy stuff there. So this was today's update about the explosive confrontations and emotional reveals in Salt Lake City. Let's now move on to next update.
Next, we are going to talk about Giudice's recent conversation surrounding Teresa Giudice's potential new show and the status of her long-running family feud. So, Giudice, who's 24, just gave us a pretty comprehensive update. She addressed all those swirling rumors about her mom, Teresa Giudice, and Louis Rellis possibly getting their own spinoff. And importantly, she shared how Teresa's time on Special Forces kind of sparked this desire for self-reflection and maybe finding some peace with the Gorgas. Okay, so about that spinoff chatter. Gia basically said her mom, Teresa, who's 53, deserves one after being on Bravo for so long. But she also made it super clear that she doesn't know anything definite about if it's actually happening or not. So, still up in the air, sounds like. Now, maybe the biggest news is this shift after Special Forces, World's Toughest Test. Gia revealed that the whole intense experience was really about self-growth for Teresa, about letting go of anger. It kind of demonstrated to Teresa how heavy all that hate and anger really is, leading her to want to move past the long-standing feud with her brother Joe, who's 50, and sister-in-law Melissa, 46. But Gia clarified this isn't about them needing to be best friends again. Her message to the family is more like, let's just coexist, you know? Be cordial and be mature, and just move on. She called the constant fighting petty. Gia also touched on her own future, mentioning the unconfirmed second season of Next Gen NYC. After reflecting on season 1, she hopes if it returns, she can be more authentic, moving past what she felt was just the outer surface level of Gia. And personally, she's planning to move to Jersey City, New Jersey. It's right across the Hudson from her job in NYC, so she gets the best of both worlds, independence, but still close to family and her boyfriend in Jersey. She's excited for people to see that side of her. Oh, and quick podcast mention. Favorites were Maria Georges, Tate Madden, Kit Keenan, and her dream guest, Khloe Kardashian. So this was today's update about Giudice's insights into her family and reality TV plans. Let's now move on to next update.
Next, we are going to talk about the recent public spat between reality stars Stassi Schroeder and Meghan Markle. Okay, so Vanderpump Rules alum Stassi Schroeder is, well, publicly saying she is completely done with the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. And it's all because of a pretty significant snub involving some promotional PR boxes. So the whole thing kicked off when Stassi revealed on her podcast, Stassi, that Meghan had sent these PR boxes out. Apparently, the Toast podcast hosts, Claudia and Jackie Oshry, got boxes, but Stassi, who calls herself Meghan's #1 defender, was left out. Stassi's pretty upset, saying she has literally defended her when no one else did, you know, even filming videos and having her PR team reach out. She thinks Meghan is kind of stuck in 2017 and just judges her as a lowly reality person because of her past. Stassi was furious, calling this the absolute last straw. She actually announced she was unfollowing Meghan and isn't going to watch her show anymore. She even described herself as a toxic fan now and really slammed Meghan for focusing on people who've questioned her instead of her actual devoted fans. Stassi sees it as Meghan trying to control the narrative, even comparing that kind of behavior to Blake Lively, calling her a control freak, and basically saying, yeah, she's tapping out. Oh, and she also mentioned that people sometimes mistake her little girl, Hartford, for Meghan's daughter Lilibet, saying Meghan could have easily just sent a box as a funny nod to the resemblance. So this was today's update about Stassi Schroeder slamming Meghan Markle. Let's now move on to the
Next, we are going to talk about the recent reveals from former The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills alum Lisa Rinna.
So, you know, Lisa Rinna left RHOBH back in 2023 after season 12, right? Well, she was just on her podcast with her husband, Harry Hamlin, Let's Not Talk About the Husbands, and she really illuminated like where she stands now with anything Bravo related. Basically, she's drawing some hard lines. She talked about Alexia Amansky's wedding, you know, Kyle Richards' daughter. Apparently, Alexia grew up with Rinna's kids, so Lisa was going just as a guest. But then, get this, she gets a text from a producer asking if they can film her there. Rinna's response? A flat no. She was like, the invitation didn't say anything about filming. She still went, you know, to support Alexia, but told them they'd have to film around her or just blur her right out if she ended up in the shot. She even said doing that gave her some nice satisfaction. And that wasn't the only time she put her foot down. Turns out Bravo actually invited her to BravoCon, that huge fan event, probably happening later this year. Even though Harry Hamlin apparently joked she was still hot property they wanted for ratings, Rinna told Bravo, no thanks. Why? Well, she remembered her last time there. Remember when she got booed? Yeah. She said Erika Jayne had even warned her backstage about the crowd. So Rinna basically said she doesn't think they could pay her enough to go through that again. It really demonstrates she's done playing by the old rules. So this was today's update about Lisa Rinna's recent boundary setting. Let's now move on to next update. Next, we are going to talk about Brandi Glanville's latest health update regarding her long-running mysterious symptoms. Okay, so Brandi Glanville, right? She's been fighting this really tough health battle for about 2 years now. Get this, she spent over $100,000 trying to figure out what's going on with these medical issues. And she thinks it might have all started after filming Real Housewives' Ultimate Girls Trip over in Morocco. The symptoms she described were, Well, pretty disturbing. She talked about noticing these crazy lumps showing up on her face. Then her face apparently started kind of moving around, and she even began losing her eyesight in her left eye. Scary stuff. She said after it first got all swollen, her face then started like sinking in. She vividly felt like something was just eating her from the inside. Can you imagine? So she talked about this whole agonizing ordeal on her podcast, Brandi Glanville Unfiltered. And finally, a new doctor seems to have cracked the case. Brandi actually admitted she felt like there were maybe too many cooks in the kitchen, too many doctors complicating things. But this new physician was able to look at all the information and give her a clear diagnosis. Turns out she has both a bone infection and a really deep skin infection, specifically staph. Now, treatment-wise, she showed she has an IV line. It goes from her right arm straight into her heart. It sounds pretty intense, and she mentioned she has to be extremely careful with it. This whole thing has taken a massive mental toll too. Just last month, she shared that she was in a really dark place earlier this summer, even feeling suicidal, partly because of those sexual assault accusations involving Caroline Manzo. Thankfully, she credits her 2 sons, Mason and Jake, for basically keeping her alive through that.
So this was today's update about Brandi Glanville's intense health battle and new diagnosis. Let's now move on to next update.
Okay, next, we're going to talk about Brittany Cartwright's public reaction to some recent comments from President Donald Trump about autism and Tylenol. So President Trump claimed autism has significantly risen, right? And he suggested a link, between Tylenol pills and vaccines. He even pointed to communities like the Amish, saying autism is virtually absent there because they avoid these things. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who Trump mentioned for a potential health role, backed this up, citing studies. Well, Brittany Cartwright, whose own son was diagnosed with autism, she immediately pushed back. She called these claims straight up misinformation from the government. She really demonstrated her understanding, pointing out that, hey, autism was actually recorded before Tylenol was even invented. Plus, she clarified there are plenty of kids on the spectrum whose moms didn't take Tylenol during pregnancy or kids who never got vaccines. And she also illuminates the issue by noting that using the word virtually kind of proves that, autism does still exist in those communities he mentioned. She wrapped it up by saying children with autism are wonderful and just deserve way better than this kind of stuff. Her former co-star, Stassi Schroeder, even chimed in, reacting to Brittany's clapback with clapping hands emojis. And this actually isn't the first time Brittany's spoken out on this. Back in April, remember, she strongly slammed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for saying autism destroys families and listing things people on the spectrum supposedly never do. Brittany emphasized then, too, that the spectrum is broad and those generalizations just don't fit. So this was today's update about Brittany Cartwright's response to the recent claims linking Tylenol and autism. Let's now move on to next update.
Next, we are going to talk about Scheana Shay's alleged departure from The Valley Season 3. Okay, so what's happening here? Well, get this. Production on The Valley Season 3 kicked off weeks ago, but Scheana Shay, Scheana, hasn't filmed a single scene. Like 0. And it's not like no one from the Vanderpump crew is there, because Lala Kent has been filming. Scheana's absence is pretty noticeable too. She actually missed some big cast events, like Naya and Danny Bucco's Sip and See for their daughter Adelaide, who was born back in June. And she wasn't at the welcome shindig for Kristen Doty and Luke Broderick's baby, Kaya Lily, either. So she's definitely not been around. Now the word is, Bravo was apparently pretty ticked off. Why? Well, seems like comments Scheana made during her book tour didn't sit well. They felt like she threw production under the bus. Specifically, she apparently revealed she helped stage a major scene on Vanderpump Rules, and maybe even more importantly, she kept calling out Lisa Vanderpump, accusing Lisa of using her. And remember, Lisa Vanderpump is an executive producer on The Valley, so that probably didn't go over too well. Then there's this whole rumored feud with Lala Kent. Lala Kent kind of downplayed it, calling it just Scheana-Scheaning. But some folks are whispering that maybe Scheana's feeling a bit jealous. The thinking is that Lala, who wasn't originally expected to be full-time this season, might have, essentially took her spot on the show. Anyway, The Valley Season 3 is in production right now, and we probably won't see it air on Bravo until sometime in early 2026.